Hi, I'm Steve Cody, co-host of Rep TV, one of the best known, if seldom seen, videos on the web today. Today we're blessed to have Dr. David Redlawsk. He's a professor at the University of Delaware, and he's chairman of the Department of Political History and International Relations. And we're going to talk about a person you've probably heard of, Donald Trump. And this will be in two segments. First, Trump Today, and by the way, this was recorded prior to the Charlottesville horror show this past weekend. But the first segment will be about Trump Today and the professor's projections for the next year and a half. So stay tuned.
Hello and welcome again to yet another installment of Rep TV. I'm your co-host Paul Merchan. You have all the way to your screen right, Mr. Repman himself, Steve Cody, and then here in between us, we are welcoming once again to the hot seat Professor David Redlawsk, Chair of the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Delaware. Welcome again, Professor.
No, I wasn't shaking your
I
hand.
know.
I was pointing out the logo.
You were pointing to that. I know, exactly.
Right. Yeah, so one of the questions that we had to start off was about Twitter. You mentioned that, and he's kind of known as sort of the Twitter president, right? A lot of his rhetoric has been considered argumentative by some on Twitter, and it doesn't seem like it's really affecting him. I mean, we see sort of low approval ratings and things like that, but nothing that's really landed him in hot water. I mean, what is it going to take for him to land himself in hot water at this point?
Well, it depends on what kind of hot water, right?
Okay.
I mean, at one level, his approval ratings not only are low, but they've continued to drift lower. And most importantly, he's lost support of independents who supported him in the election, and even Republicans are slowly peeling off. The telling number is that only about 40% of Republicans in some of the latest polling strongly support him. Now, he's still got 75-80% support among Republicans generally. How much of that is because of his style, the Twitter, the way he uses it? How much of it is because of policy? It's pretty hard to tell at the moment, but I will say that the use of Twitter the way he does keeps everybody more confused than maybe we'd like to be, right? We don't really know what's policy. We don't really know what's just happens to be on the top of his head. We don't necessarily know what he's just tweeting because he was watching Fox and Friends at the moment.
Question for you. In terms of his mano-a-mano fight with Mitch McConnell, have you ever in presidential history seen anyone go after the head of his own political party?
Not like this. I mean, there's often tension between Congress and the president, and even when Congress is controlled by the same party as the president, there is this level of tension because the institutions are, at least in theory, co-equals.
Right.
And in particular, congressional leaders historically have been very protective of that co-equal status and have pushed back when they thought a president was not treating them appropriately. But this is a little different because we're now dealing with very personal kind of attacks, very one-on-one, right? And it's not to Trump's benefit in the end. He's still operating a bit as if he still thinks the president can do something on his own. And the reality is, the president can't. There's very little a president can actually make happen.
Sure.
Like Jean-Luc Picard, make it so, right?
Exactly.
Most of the time, he needs Congress to make it actually happen. And so there's not a great benefit in beating up on your own party's leader.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen him almost try to do on his own is wage this. Right now, it's a war of words with North Korea. We may see the first declaration of war over Twitter at some point, all-out war. I think that what we're seeing with North Korea is really interesting because I don't think we've ever seen a sitting president speak sort of in this manner. We've always seen like sometimes they would threaten other countries and things like that, but to actually go on and do it the way Trump has done, what makes it so different about the way that he's issuing these threats?
Well, everything's different about this. Again, usually our interactions with other countries are done through diplomatic channels. Presidents will say public things, but they will be carefully vetted through the State Department, through the Defense Department. Everybody will be on the same page. We have the president tweeting things like fire and fury.
Yeah.
And at the same time, then we have the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense busy trying to walk it back. There's also a report this afternoon that there have been months of back-channel diplomatic efforts with North Korea happening completely, of course, under the radar, but that's how things normally get done.
Sure.
The president's tweets, there's no world in which those really help in this context.
So you think those undermine? Sorry, Steve. They undermine the efforts that we've been making on the diplomatic side behind
They
it.
absolutely do. They absolutely do. Now, what they're really about, I think, is Trump continuing to talk to his base, continuing to talk to that relatively small group now that is his strong supporters, that he sees as what keeps him in place.
Is it not, as some have suggested, an ideal way to divert attention away from Mueller and the Russian investigation?
We could kind of look at almost every tweet lately and say, isn't that about distraction? The Mueller investigation, of course, is happening, will continue to happen. As the line somebody said, Trump is out golfing, Mueller's working, right?
Right.
And this will, those kind of investigations are generally happening quite quietly in the background. We have the raid on Manafort that has just come to light. Again, I think this is much about keeping Trump's base in his corner, distracting perhaps from what's going on with the Russia investigation, but it's also just simply who Donald Trump is. We need to remember that, had there been Twitter in the 80s, we'd have seen this from him back then. I mean, this is a guy that this is just the way he is.
Right.
It's kind of two school bullies going after each other.
It is.
Yeah. With regard to his base, I think I know Steve, you had some interesting points on that, just on how he continues to play with his base and play to his base, I should say. Right.
Yeah. Is it a wise strategy, especially when he's not able to get the Republicans to pass the legislation that he promised his base he would pass? So how much more of a pass will the base give him?
Well, that's why I say I think we're seeing some peeling off already, but there is a very strong there's a real core that just very strongly supports Trump. They support what Trump represents essentially, which is this idea that somehow we can bring back something that they feel has been lost, an America that's been lost somehow. And I think it would be very hard for him to ever lose them.
Yeah.
It's worth keeping in mind that on the eve of being impeached and ultimately resigned, Republicans still supported Richard Nixon quite strongly in all the polling.
Yeah.
The difference there was you had Democrats controlling the legislature, Congress, so they could do the investigations and so on and so forth.
You said the big I word, which we're actually going to take a break right now, but we're going to come back for a second segment. We appreciate all your thoughts and insights. And in the second segment, we'll discuss a little more about Trump in the future, what's going to happen with him and also with the midterm elections coming up. So stay tuned for the next segment coming up your way.